So yes, if you really do love that person and you deeply want them to have the kind of success trajectory that you are about to take, go at them with an honest ask, with a true wish for them to join you on this journey. But if they're not willing to, you cannot stay behind and drown in their just life of sorrows with them. You need to move forward. So I love how you put that.
A lot of people, they make this excuse. I made these excuses. Today I get to chat with my buddy John Lee Dumas. John has a very successful show, it's a podcast called Entrepreneurs on Fire. And something that John and I obviously have in common is a long-time love of entrepreneurship. John normally interviews people for his podcast, asking about their entrepreneurial journeys, etc. And today I have the privilege to interview John a bit and ask him to share some of his entrepreneurial experiences with you. And something you and I were chatting about earlier, John, was that does entrepreneurship, does success happen overnight in entrepreneurship? Has it been your experience that it happens extraordinarily easy with no frictions and wealth comes overnight? Or how would you best describe your experiences in the entrepreneurial realms?
Well, first off, Derek, thank you for having me on the show. It's been awesome to get to chat with you and welcome you to both my home and my island here in Puerto Rico, brother. So welcome to the Enchanted Island. And I do have a massive belief in life that's overnight success is always 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
Every single person that you can point to in this world that's achieved success, or as people love to say, overnight success, has at least, and I mean at least, a decade of hard work backing that up. And I'm one of those people. You're one of those individuals. I've interviewed, as you mentioned, on Entrepreneurs on Fire, over 3,000 successful entrepreneurs. 0.0 of them have achieved overnight success overnight. They've achieved it over time, over years, because it's the struggle that leads to the success. It's the friction that leads to the innovation, the ideas, the pivots, the adjustments that makes entrepreneurs who become successful the success they are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. That I spent 9 years in university trying to learn something. You learn some successful things there. You learn some things that'll contribute to your success there, and then you spent decades doing real entrepreneurship, which is not mapped out for you in a class anywhere. It's a very difficult topic to teach in a university.
Impossible.
Even people that even brilliant professors who really have your interest in mind, and even if they themselves are very successful. Some of my professors were multi-billionaires at University of Chicago that they already had really extreme wealth and extraordinarily successful people, and they wanted to help you as charity that they would show up and try to teach a class. They wanted to help you. It's just a very difficult topic to teach someone that. They have to have that internal drive. You can't replace that. You have to have an internal drive, internal motivation to want to go do something and be somebody, to want to go help other people solve their problems. And if you can do that long enough, I think about the stages of success, or especially building a brand. I'm curious your thoughts on this.
Sure.
I think the stages of building a brand is like, stage one, you're working your ass off, and no one knows you exist and no one cares at all. And then stage two, people start to become aware that you exist, but they mock you and make fun of you. So you're going to be made fun of. You're going to be mocked. You're going to be tooled in various ways, and that'll continue to a point that you'll feel worse. You're actually making progress, but a person might feel worse if you're building a public brand. Then you get to a point, when your success is undeniable, when you've obviously done some significant things. And no reasonable person could deny that you're a victor and have done some considerable winning. Then you get haters. Then you get critics and naysayers that try to be detractors of your brand and who you are and what you've done. So I think those are the three stages regarding any public endeavors, as you've done or I've done to some extent. That first you're ignored, and that feels bad, and then you're made fun of, and that feels worse, even though you're making progress. And then, when things are doing so well that you don't have any time to pay attention to any of that noise, but then you'll have haters and detractors of various sorts. Have you had an experience like this, or how would you compare your life experience to that model?
All of that. I mean, I do love that philosophy of first, they do ignore you. They will ignore you because why wouldn't they? I mean, everybody's living a busy life. Like, don't worry about being ignored. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. Then they will make fun of you because they won't get it. Then they will fight you because now they're scared. But then the final step is you win. So ignore, make fun of, fight, and then you will win. These are stages you will go through as an entrepreneur. And I look back on my journey, brother, and wow, did people ignore me. When I was podcasting back in day one, I was podcasting to an empty room. I was podcasting to a black hole. I had no listeners, no downloads, no subscribers, no follows. I was being ignored. And guess what? Looking back, I'm kind of in some ways glad I was ignored because I had to get better at my craft, which is one of the reasons why I loved doing a daily podcast, because that meant every single day I got to get up and do the work. And that's a great book by Stephen Pressfield, Do the Work. It's, to me, the epitome of what every entrepreneur needs to do in stage one of their business is do the work, get better at your craft. I run the biggest podcasting community in the world, Podcasters Paradise. People come up to me all the time, John, how can I grow my podcast audience? I'm like, well, you suck as a podcaster. You are a terrible interviewer. You don't know how to facilitate a conversation. How about you become better at your craft that you're actually doing before you try to grow your podcast? Because you can spend all the money in the world attracting all the earballs that people can listen to your podcast, but nobody's going to subscribe. Nobody's going to tell their friends about it. There's going to be no virality because you're just not putting out a good product. So why don't you just be honest with yourself, get better at your craft, actually become good at speaking, at communicating, at facilitating a conversation, and then you can start to talk about growing your podcast. So be fine with the fact that people are ignoring you at first. Now, the next step, and this is what we both experienced as well, myself for sure, is people will make fun of you. They'll be like, 2012, John, what are you doing? Podcasting? Nobody listens to podcasts. It's just like this weird kind of minor trend that seems to be popping up with a couple geeks out there in the world. Like, you're spending so much time doing this. Like, you're such a silly fool. And that is the toughest part, as you mentioned, Derek, because you're in love with what you're doing typically at this stage as an entrepreneur because you've been doing it long enough to get over that ignoring part. You've put in the work, but you are this fragile flower at this stage. And when people make fun of you, like, you just want to wilt up and you just want to crawl into a corner and in some ways die. And like, it's just like, that was such a tough stage for me when people did finally start recognizing me, but not in the ways that I wanted because they were just poking and making fun of how I was spending my time. And then I kept putting in the work. And what was I doing? I was getting better at my craft, doing it every single day, going from a terrible speaker, interviewer, conversationalist to a bad one, then to an okay one, then to a marginally good one, and so on and so forth, to where I started getting traction, where now people were kind of getting a little scared. They were getting a little like, whoa, what's happening here? Like, John's building this media empire that I can't participate in, that I haven't built. Mm-hmm. What is happening here? And they started to fight me. And they started to fight what I was building. And by that stage, it's a pretty quick transition to just winning. Because once people start fighting you, there's a reason why they're now stepping up and trying to beat you down, and it's too late. And you've already won. And of course, I just went through those 4 stages pretty quickly, and that took me essentially 6 to 7 years to go through those 4 stages. And I'm now sitting here talking to you in my 10th year, so a decade in. But it's the transition we've all gone through, brother.
I think it's something that might be very useful to the audience. I have 2 tidbits in mind based on what you said. Is, tidbit 1, which I'll spend 10 seconds on, is, no need to dwell on haters. Like, the number one thing a hater hates is themselves. And you touched on
hurt people hurt people. Like, think about that phrase. Whenever I get an Instagram message or a comment or somebody emails me, or I just launched my first traditionally published book, if somebody leaves a bad review, like, I literally have empathy for that person because I'm like, how bad is that person's life that they're now taking time to go out of their way to trash something, especially like my podcast and most of my courses that are free. They're trashing something that's free, that's super valuable, that's helping a lot of people. Like, that person is hurting and they're lashing out. And hurt people. And when you're able as an entrepreneur, to shift your mindset and not get offended by that comment and let it ruin your day, but instead have empathy for that person and say, like, oh, like, honestly, like, I hope your day gets better. I hope your week, your month, your life gets better. That changes everything.
Yeah, I think some of those people are really your biggest fans, but they're deeply envious. They know they don't have the oomph. They know they don't have the commitment to do what you did, to build what you did, to be the sort of person you are. So I think they're your truly your biggest and most envious fans.
Well, it's interesting you say that.
And they hate themselves that they couldn't do it too.
On that point, my biggest haters know more about me than anybody else. So you're so right with that statement. It's like I get blown away with like the detail of their attack. I'm like, this person knows like everything about me. So you're right. Like they are just such uber followers and like quote unquote fans that just have, for whatever reason, decided to take their energy, turn it envious.
Yeah. I agree with your comment of empathy that you feel bad for the poor bastard in some ways.
You have to. This is no other way.
But in any case, I think a valuable one to them is, you know, everybody has this process, and you touched on the periphery of it. That, you know, there's a lot of people that think that, well, you know, oh, but you know, if I'm successful, like my friends, you know, I'm losing my friends because it's, you know, the things you're doing are not relatable to your friends, you know. And, you know, you and I had conversations about this in the past of, you know, the 5 people you spend the most time with is like, you're going to have a different peer group, because if you really have a vision to do something extraordinary, it's not going to be relatable to people from your past, you know. I made the error. I'm curious if you did. I made the error. I begged some of my friends to come with me. I begged some of my friends, come to college with me, start this business with me, come travel and do this thing with me. And I spent too much time. In retrospect, I feel bad about it. In retrospect, I feel like, you know, I asked some of my friends 100 times. I begged them, come do this thing with me, come do this thing. And 2 years later, they're not qualified. After you did the thing and you built the thing, and without them, they're not qualified to be a part of that anymore. And you kind of touched on the periphery of that it's unfortunate that, you know, they didn't believe in themselves. They didn't believe in you, or they didn't believe in themselves enough to come along with. But my strong advice to somebody out there is, you know, if you have a good friend, like your best friend, ask him 2 times, no more than 3 times. And if he's not excited to come along and be a willing, contributing participant, let him go do whatever they do. And, you know, just keep it moving, be productive, be successful. But you can't convince somebody else to show up for their own success if they're not into it. But have you had some of these situations that have strained old
100%.
relationships?
I mean, listen, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, just like you mentioned, Derek. And so many people that are watching this right now, your friend group, your top 5, your top 10, they're full of Debbie Downers. They're full of Don Doolittles. And guess what? If you want to be a Debbie Downer, if you want to be a Don Doolittle, stay with those friends. Stay with those friends, because that is going to be your life. And for some people, that's going to be their life. You're not watching this video right now because you want that to be your life. Because right now, honestly, a Debbie Downer, a Don Doolittle, they're watching some reality TV show about housewives or some kind of reality, you know, get thinner show, whatever it might be. They're not consuming this type of content. So just the fact that you're consuming this content, it proves to me with 100% certainty that you want more in this life. And guess what? Success comes with sacrifice. And these individuals don't have to be cut out of your life 100%. They cannot be in your top 5, though. Your top 5 have to be people who are inspiring, motivating, on the same trajectory as you. As Derek put it so eloquently, and I've never thought about it in that way before, which I, again, loved hearing it from him, because it's a great example of why I surround myself with people like Derek, because I learned too, is if your friend doesn't come with you after your first or second ask, and you go forward, and then you look back at them in a year or 2 years' time, they can never catch up. You are already on this trajectory towards success, and it's over for them. Like, they literally can go on their own trajectory. Hopefully you can be an inspiration to them, but they will forever be behind you, where they will be trying to play catch up and never be able to, but at least they're trying to play catch up, and I hope they do. Or they just stay in that same sad state that you left them in. It's only one of the two. So yes, if you really do love that person and you deeply want them to have the kind of success trajectory that you are about to take, go at them with an honest ask, with a true wish for them to join you on this journey. But if they're not willing to, you cannot stay behind and drown in their just life of sorrows with them. You need to move forward. So I love how you put that.
A lot of people, they make this excuse. I made these excuses. So it's a sensitive topic to me because I feel like I wasted too much of my life
You did.
trying to help people that didn't want to help themselves. And I feel really stupid about it. I feel extraordinarily dumb. And I really learned to not do that again. You know, my mother was one of those type of people that, you could spend endless time, donating to charity, donating your life and energy and positive thoughts to try to help somebody. But if they don't want to help themselves, they're not fucking gonna. And I learned to not do that with my friends. Even if it's your family, you can't waste your life doing this. If it's the quality of person that you idealize them to be, they'll figure it out by themselves just like you did. They'll at least try to play catch up and build their own version of their utopic reality. They'll at least try to do that.
Yeah, become their inspiration, by the way. Like Derek's become an inspiration for so many of his friends, as have I, who have gone off now and done great things because they had to see people who came from the same background as them actually do it that they knew. And so instead of waiting for them and trying to drag them, kicking and screaming, being a dead weight for you, release them, go be amazing, and inspire them.
You'll know it's time to cut them off completely, which I know you don't want to hear. I know you don't want to hear that. But you'll know you've come to the time where you should cut them off completely or only visit them once a year, perhaps, if it pains you so much to say completely. I had a couple of friends in life that you couldn't even speak about your life experience anymore
Really?
with those people. That your conversations would inevitably revert to what we did back in the day. A conversation from childhood or something, or some mischievous activity in our teenage years, sort of conversation.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of buddies that ended up like that. It was unfortunate that one of my best friends from childhood passed away when he was 32, and
That's sad.
he had some substance abuse issues that it's unfortunate. So, but we'd have to have those type of conversations, and I just seen them less and less, and until your life is so full of other good things that it's not the best use of your time to go reminisce in that way.
Yeah, let me end with one thing on this topic that I think is super important, and a recommendation for people if they feel like they need to dive deeper is, there's a fantastic book. It's called The 5 Biggest Regrets of the Dying. And it's about a hospice nurse who literally spent 20 years of her life spending her days with individuals who are on their last days of life. And she went around and just loved having conversations with these individuals because she knew that they enjoyed it. It was helping them. But she was fascinated too. And the number one regret of these 5 regrets is that these individuals let other people in their life dictate their future. And one thing that you shared so eloquently on my podcast recently was 100% responsibility. Like, you're the CEO of your own life. And these individuals did not take that staff and become the CEOs of their life. They did not take 100% responsibility. And it was the biggest regret in their final living days that they looked back and they said, you know what? Like, I just let other people dictate the decisions I made. I let their opinions dictate the job that I took, the person I married, the path that I took, and I regret it because looking now, knowing I'm about to depart this world, I know with certainty what I should have done. And I knew it then, but I let other people dictate my future, and there's nothing sadder than that, brother.
It is sad. It is sad. Let's pivot back to, you said 2012, you start this podcast, nobody cares. So, improve your skills, improve your other skills, improve some more skills, work your ass off, learn new things, probably learn some psychologically painful things about yourself.
Yeah.
I've certainly had those experiences. I imagine you have.
I did.
You have to admit some things to yourself that are not flattering, but you have to come to terms with them.
Yeah, like I sucked as a podcast host. That hurt. I had to admit that.
What were some of the motivations that pushed you through those harder times? When you have those moments of self-doubt, or when it'd be easier to give up and go get a job or something, what were some of the key motivations that pushed you through those harsher times?
Honestly, just the reality of the people that I was surrounding myself with, man. I was getting to interview the world's most successful entrepreneurs every single day. And the first question I asked on my podcast for 2,000 days in a row, I've since changed the format up. For my first 2,000 episodes, though, I said, Derek, what's your biggest entrepreneurial failure? And they would tell these stories that literally would break your entrepreneurial heart because they were so sad and so devastating and crippling. But now I'm talking to a person who's this massive success, and I'm like, man, they went through hell to get to where they are. What am I complaining about just with, people ignoring my little podcast right now? I mean, like, what do I have to really complain about? This person was on top of the mountain, lost it all, lost the wife, the kids, the husband, the money, the job, the fame, the fortune, the respect. And they were able to come back and build it all back up. So it was, those stories made me realize that, like, hey, even though I'm struggling right now in my own little world, like, these people who are at the top of the mountain now, who I'm interviewing on my show every single day, like, their inspirational stories were just keeping me going. And again, it goes back to just by hearing that every single day. And just like when I had you on my show, I ended the episode by saying, Fire Nation, you've been hanging out with Derek and JLD today, and you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, so keep up the heat. Like, I really need that. Like, when you're watching us right now, we're 2 of the 5 people you're spending time with today. And I was doing that every single day on my podcast, and that was just upping my 5, even though it was on a virtual basis. It was amazing.
So he's pushing that, using those failure stories as inspiration for yourself.
100%.
If you push through, you'll have the outcome because you're that type of person. I had a conversation like that once upon a time with Russell Simmons. And Russell said that everything that you do in life is going to be a failure until you make it a success.
Oof.
It's going to be a failure by default until you make it a success.
Russell.
And Russell was saying that he started in the record industry back in the 80s, and then he went on to run Def Jam Records. And he said to everybody he knew, your closest friends and family told him, you can't do that. People like you don't make it in that industry. You can't do that. And he did, and he got 100 and some million from that. And then he had a fashion brand, a male fashion brand called Fat Farm, and then later a female version of that called Baby Fat, and he sold that for 260 million, something like this.
Give or take.
And then and then the financial services and jewelry and the next thing and the next thing, and you make a couple 100 million there and another 100 million there. Pretty soon you got a lot of money.
Yeah.
Pretty soon you're doing okay. So, but Russell said that everybody, your closest friends and your family, they're going to say, what do you know about this? You never worked in that industry.
Yeah.
You don't know that industry. You can't do this. You can't do that. And, 3 years or 5 years later, when you get that big check, they say, I knew you could do it.
I always knew. I always had faith in you. And let me share a quick story on this, actually. So a couple things I did right at the beginning of my journey is I hired a mentor. I hired a great, successful business podcast host. Mm-hmm. She was fantastic. She guided me on how to launch a successful business podcast. And I joined a mastermind. This guy's mastermind was called the Podcast Answer Man Mastermind. Cliff Ravenscraft was his name. He was and still is a great podcaster. Both of them, Derek, said to me flat out, John, there's a reason why nobody's done a daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. And just for the viewers real quick, I launched the first daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs because every podcast interviewing entrepreneurs was once per week. And I said, I need to be different and unique to stand out in the marketplace. They both looked at me with the best of intentions, by the way, and they said, John, do not launch a daily podcast. There's a reason why everybody does it once a week. You'll never figure out the time to make it happen. You'll run out of guests. You'll run out of bandwidth. Like, you'll get burned out. And this is a mindset shift I think will be helpful for all the viewers here today that Russell obviously had as a mindset. I actually said to myself, if everybody's telling me, especially the best people in the industry at the time, that it can't be done, and I find a way to do it, there's the opportunity. And that's exactly what was my inspiration.
Yeah. No, that's big. I think that only stupid people try to figure everything out by themselves. Every smart person gets a mentor. I had so many mentors that, I had mentors. I grew up with a lot of negative mentors or anti-role models, if you will. So I had a lot of people that taught me things like, I'm never going to do that. Or, oh my God, that's terrible. I never want that outcome. how did they get that outcome? All right, let me make sure I never do that, And then later I got to pivot into, very positive mentors that, some of those through college and whatnot and academic education. And, at University of Chicago, you're studying, I know you have finance background as well. And, you're learning, Eugene Fama is your professor, Richard Thaler,
Wow.
they're Nobel Prize winners.
Totally.
And, everybody in that industry or in that space knows who they are. And, they changed the world, or they changed the thought of the world in some of those spaces. So, you had fantastic mentors there. There were, some of the top academics in the world, some of the best entrepreneurs in the world. I spent over $100,000 a year on masterminds and entrepreneurial groups. It's the best money I spend all year. And I looked at my taxes a few years ago, and I spent like $38,000. And I thought, what the hell? It's like every time you spend money on these things, even if you don't get the money back immediately, you meet somebody that 3 years later you made a lot of money together, or
One connection.
5 years later,
Insane.
or you just met a cool friend that you'd be delighted to pay $250,000 just to have another friend like that,
Yeah.
or something, or a buddy like that in
Well,
your
and
life.
here's a quick mindset thing on that too, is like, I love this when somebody said this to me. They were essentially saying, John, do you ever want to be in a position where you're making $10,000 a day, like as a coach? And I said, yeah, I would love that hypothetically. This is back in 2013, 2014. And they said, well, how could you ever command $10,000 for one day as a coach if you're not willing to spend that on yourself, on a coach? How can you, there's incongruency there. And I said, I can't wait to invest $10,000 in a coach right now, because I one day want to command that. And that has now just expanded and grown.
Yeah. I've spent well over $1 million between academic education and self-help things and mentoring groups and mastermind groups and so on. Best money I ever spent in my life. I got such a great return on that money. Best money I ever spent in my life. All my clients are those type of people that they've
smart.
Just what you said is that if you don't believe in your future enough to invest in it, why the hell would anybody else ever believe in your future?
Why would they? They should.
If you don't believe in your own future enough to invest in your future, to put money down, to say, you know what, I'm going to invest this money in better guidance, so you're not misguided, so you're not undecided, so you're not stuck in a state of confusion. You know what to do, and you could go, take that work ethic and execute in the right ways. If you don't believe in yourself enough to invest in yourself, don't ever expect anybody else to. No other quality people are going to. No other quality people will. So I love spending money on things like that. That anything new that I want to learn, I want to hire coaches and trainers and mentors or mastermind. I've kind of become addicted. In some ways, I'm a bit of a sucker for it, that I'm just like, I don't have time to learn all the things that I'm curious to learn. Well, let me go find some of the best people in the world that are doing that, and learn it from them, and shortcut decades of my life.
And you can be strategic about it. I was interviewing Tim Ferriss a little while ago, and he said, hey, like, if you have any sport that like you want to become good at for any reason, like, go find the silver medalist in that sport. The gold medalists, they may have won by 1/100th of a second, but they get all the fame, all the glory, all the money, all the endorsements, all the big money to coach other people. And then guess what? People just ignore the silver medalist, who maybe was just that far behind.
2/100ths of a second.
But guess what? That person would be thrilled to potentially make some money coaching or mentoring or giving you some guidance that, again, like you just mentioned, could just crack decades off of your learning curve.
Tim and I have spent, Tim Ferriss, maybe 2.5, 3 weeks around each other. That we were on boat cruises together and other various entrepreneurial events. We were members of the same group and got to know each other a bit. And I think the thing that Tim is very best at, he's a very talented person, but I think the thing he's very best at is little hacks like that of
Good.
finding those little shortcuts to get 80% of the value in 20% of the time, and then shifting to another area and doing it again and doing it again. Pretty soon you start to be pretty talented. It's a great guy, though.
Yeah, big time.
Right. In your experience interviewing, literally thousands of top performing entrepreneurs and some of the biggest names in the world for that matter, what are a couple of the key takeaways that you got from that free mentorship of sorts and success by association? What are a couple of the main takeaways that you've seen with other successful people or they've implemented yourself?
3 major takeaways. Number 1, successful entrepreneurs are productive individuals. But I need to make an asterisk here, because a lot of people think they're productive. You are not productive, believe me. You are just busy. You're spending your time being busy, scrolling Instagram, liking this, tagging that. productive people produce the right content. Right now, you and I, we're being productive in this moment because we are producing the right content for both of our brands. And that's what successful entrepreneurs do. So you need to identify at the end of every day, what did I actually do today that was productive? What did I actually produce today that content-wise is moving my brand forward, my business forward, just my overall self-awareness forward? What am I producing to be productive? The second thing, and this is something that really, was hammered into me on the battlefields of Iraq, is discipline. Like every successful entrepreneur that I interviewed, which I actually learned strategic insights from them on this, but luckily came into the entrepreneurial game with this skill set as well, is being disciplined. And again, by disciplines, this means having a plan of action every single day that you are a disciple to executing upon. It is shocking when I have very high level mentees come in under my mentorship program and I just say, okay, it's 7 a.m. right now, what's your plan for the day? And they'll look at me like deer in the headlights, like, oh, like I was gonna go like check my email and then maybe post things on social media. I'm like, wait a second, you don't have a plan for today? Like it baffles me that people literally live their lives without a plan. And I actually love the phrase, and I put this in some of my work that I do, is called win tomorrow today. I never go to sleep without a fully fleshed out and functionable plan scheduled for the next day. So I wake up in the morning, I'm not relying on my brain sleep deprived like JLD to make the plan for the day starting that morning. I relied on the person yesterday to create that plan for me. So when I wake up, now all I have to do is execute upon that plan. And the third thing successful entrepreneurs do across the board, better than your unsuccessful or just average success entrepreneur, is they all have focus. And focus for me can be broken down into the acronym, which is follow one course until success. Every entrepreneur that I've interviewed that's become an entrepreneur on fire, literally, which is why I have them on the show, has become the best at one specific thing. They are the best solution to a real problem, and that's why they've made it into my world, into my universe. It's the people, Derek, that just go 1 inch wide and 1 mile deep. 1 mile wide and 1 inch deep, just trying to make all this impact across all these different areas. It never amounts to something. The individuals that just go 1 inch wide and 1 mile deep, those people win at a high level.
There's so many things. When you talk to any high performer, it doesn't matter what they are. One of my clients is an Olympic swimmer, and he swam with some of the most famous and most medal-winning people in human history. He and I have these same conversations. I have a lot of friends that are high performers, and you end up to these truths, these universal truths, or non-trendy facts. I don't like being trendy. These type of tidbits are the information. It's not trendy. It doesn't sound romantic. It doesn't sound motivational to some chump laying on his couch doing not much. But these are things that actually help somebody win.
Yeah.
And that first comment of if you don't have a good mentor, if you don't have a good role model, you might be working hard, you might be busy working hard, but if you're working on the wrong things, you're actually making your life worse, not better. You're working hard, you're exhausting the energy of your body and your youth in literally getting a worse outcome than the chump sitting on the couch doing nothing.
Well, I love this phrase. So many people are running 1,000,000 miles an hour, but in the wrong direction. What happens after an hour? You're 1,000,000 miles in the wrong direction. Come on.
Yeah, the comment you made regarding planning your day ahead of time, that I've started doing this in my early 20s. I never heard anybody else talk about it. In my early 20s, I started thinking to myself, every it's like a ritual. I'm not a religious person, but if I was, it'd be like a religious ritual that's helped my life a lot. Is every day before I go to sleep, every night, I think to myself, what are the 3 things I need to do tomorrow? One's always about relationships. One's always about money. And the third one gets to be whatever is urgent or top of mind that day, whatever seems important that day, whether it is or not, And I always set those goals of like, what's the number one thing you need to do to help your relationships with your romantic partner, your friend, your business somebody? What's the number one thing that you could do to build your future relationships today or tomorrow in that case? I think it's the same thing about money. What's the number one money opportunity for tomorrow? What's the thing that you must accomplish tomorrow to advance your long-term financial goals? And the third one can be whatever it is. The key thing, when I wake up in the morning, I just go revisit that list. Is that still the number one thing? This takes 10 minutes. It takes
So
10
easy.
minutes before you go to bed. It takes another 8 minutes when you wake up in the morning. Is that your answer from last night? Is that still the most important thing? Or do you have a better rendition, a revised version that seems to be an enhanced version the next morning? A lot of times your problems can solve themselves in your sleep. I'm not one of these woo-woo people at all, not at all. But a lot of
I
times
saw a problem in my sleep.
you go to, I think every smart person has, and a couple of dummies accidentally did as well. Sometimes you go to sleep thinking about something and the solution comes, and you wake up and you're like, oh shit, I could just do this instead.
Boom.
And you're already in a good mood and you know how to spend your day, I need to get this knocked out. I need to get this knocked out. I need to get this knocked out. And what else can I do? Well, you built that momentum. I've been doing that for 20 years. It really helped my life tremendously for not much effort, for 15, 20 minutes a day. I'm not into meditation. I'm not against meditation. I think it really helps some people. But what do they meditate for? They want to be calm. They want to be focused, etc. That helps me be calm and focused. Is setting that plan before I went to bed, wake up, revisit that plan. Is this still the best plan? All right, let's get up and execute then. Spend the day doing that. It's helped my life tremendously. A lot of my clients, they cheer for this as well. That for not much effort, great difference in your outcome.
Win tomorrow, today.
Yep. So John, you're one of these people, like me, like many of my clients, that you're much more concerned about your goals than your excuses. Happy to forego a few excuses to accomplish your goals. And like anybody starts in entrepreneurship, you start off, you decide you're going to do a podcast that nobody else has done before. And unsurprisingly, some frictions, some frustrations happen. You get past that. You remember, goals are more important than your short-term emotions. Push past that. Persevere. And then you go on to do interview after interview. About 3,000 interviews got under the belt. A lot of top quality entrepreneurs, some of the biggest entrepreneurs that ever lived on earth. Yeah,
Yes.
Fair to say. Fair to say. What's next? You built you're certainly at that phase that past being ignored, can't be made fun of by any credible person. No time to talk about haters. Number one thing a hater hates is themselves, as we established. What's next for you? What are you working on? What are you excited about?
Yeah, well, number one, I am excited about, honestly, this conversation, because what you just talked about is so important for people to really understand, is that so many people, Derek, will spend the rest of their lives in their comfort zone. They found this one little rut that works. It's just they're making just enough money. They're comfortable. They're good at what they do. And so they stay in this rut. They stay in this comfort zone. But one thing that I've identified, and I've seen for all of my interviewees that I've had on my show over a decade, is not just some of the magic, but all of the magic happens outside of your comfort zone. So when you're ready to make some magic happen, get out of your comfort zone, because the rut that you're living in right now has zero opportunity for magic. And that's why, about a year ago, I actually did decide to finally sit down after all these interviews and all these decades, or not decades, but a decade now of doing what I do with Entrepreneurs on Fire, and take all of this knowledge that I've acquired over the years from my guests that I've had on the show and write my first traditionally published book. And I love talking about this book because it's 0% my genius and it's 100% the genius of these 3,000 successful entrepreneurs. Because what I did was I took their genius that I've learned from the thousands and thousands of hours of conversations I've had over the past decade, and I boiled the concepts down into 17 core foundational principles that every single entrepreneur shares with each other. And just being a military guy who just likes order and function, I said, there's a roadmap here. So I put those 17 foundational principles in a step-by-step chronological roadmap. And I was looking at the roadmap to financial freedom and fulfillment right in front of me, one that I followed and one that every one of my guests has followed. And so I decided to call the book The Common Path to Uncommon Success, a 17-step roadmap to financial freedom and fulfillment, because that's what it is. And the book went live on March 23rd. I spent 480 hours writing this book. I poured everything into it. And I'm just fired up about it. And the book did 24,000 sales day one. I mean, it just blew it out of the water, became a #1 business bestseller on Amazon immediately, and already has over 300 5-star reviews, and something I'm very proud of. And again, I'm most proud of it is because it's not my knowledge and my genius. It's the 3,000 cumulative geniuses that I've been fortunate enough to have conversations like this with over a decade, put out into a very common path to uncommon success. Because that's what you've achieved, Derek. You've achieved uncommon success. It'd be great if everybody has achieved your kind of success, but they haven't. It's uncommon. And that's what I want for people who are watching this type of content is uncommon success. I don't care what happens to the person that's watching a reality TV show on Netflix right now, because they don't care about themselves. So why should I care about that? But I care about you, who is taking the time to watch us provide you free value right now. That matters to me, and I want to give you value for that.
Yeah, that's who my clients are. There are people that they love themselves enough to invest in themselves. They trust themselves enough that when they invest in themselves, they're going to have that discipline to follow that path, to implement the steps necessary to accomplish their goal. And you've learned this, and I've learned this. It's a universal truth that the quickest way for you to accomplish your goal, whatever it is to break that down into small pieces and then find the mentors, find the leaders, find the mentors, find the educators, find the coaches. They've already done that. They have a history of success in those numerous areas. And when you assemble that team of elite mentors from various backgrounds around the world, it really takes a lot of the stress, the risk out of entrepreneurship. It really makes your entrepreneurial path as streamlined as it can be, alleviates that frustration when you realize every successful entrepreneur had frustrations. Everyone had days of self-doubt and feeling like shit and wondering, like, God, maybe I should drive a fucking Uber or something. Maybe this is not for me.
So true.
And the majority of my clients, by the way, a lot of them are military people. And
no kidding.
I love military people. It's, thank you for your service.
Appreciate
I have a lot
that.
of respect for that. I think military people and even police today don't get enough respect. That
Agreed.
The people that talk bad about them haven't done shit and
never will.
And never will. And and imagine the lives they'd be living without that protection. It's a luxury to be that delusional, to not be respectful of people that have risk their lives and give their lives to protect and defend our great country. But a lot of the military people, they can follow directions. They've already been trained to follow directions, and I found that many of them that when they find a leader that they know that if I follow that path, I will have great results. So John's outlined a lot of that from his military experience, from his experience with entrepreneurs. If you follow that path, you're going to have better results. You're going to have that cumulative knowledge and wisdom to better guide you of what you'd be best at, what you should be doing, and use that wisdom to shortcut the path, to avoid the pain, and the suffering, and misery that every entrepreneur has to endure to live their most successful path. John, thank you for joining. Thanks for inviting me to your home, inviting me to beautiful Puerto Rico here. Get John's book, check it out. What does a book cost, John? What does a book cost?
$15.
$15
For a decade of my life.
$15 to hear a summary statement from 3,000 successful entrepreneurs, some of the biggest in the world. Check out John's book. Again, John, thanks for inviting me to your home. Having a fantastic time. I'll talk to you soon.
I was living on my coach's living room on a mattress. I ended up just bouncing at a bar. I'd been a cop. I quit my job. And
Derek Moneyberg presents The 10 Commandments of Wealth.
Took the gamble on myself to become a successful professional fighter and make it to the UFC or Pride. And at the time, and
am I making a sacrifice right now, or am I just investing in a better future? So it's easier for me to make those decisions when I think about it as like, oh.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that you mention it, having to actually really process and think about it, I think that word sacrifice is kind of like, I believe it's the word that the ones at the top kind of use to make everyone else feel better about it. Because when you're at the top, now you realize that was an investment.
Was everything just golden and easy and handed to you, or do you have a little struggle yourself along the way?
No. Yeah, in 2013 and 2015, I was living out of my car, full time, and I was too proud to ask for help. Like, how ridiculous is that? You're living out of your car and you think you know it all. And 2015, that's when I kind of I knew that I didn't know it all. So why not find experts in that and really shortcut that? I thought I was going to just chip away. I thought I was just going to read books till I was an expert. I never really talked to anyone that actually did it.
It's been about a week since I've joined the 10 Commandments of Wealth program, and there's so many interviews that are offered in this program.
I'm inside the Derek Moneyberg 10 Commandments of Wealth program. This is an awesome program that you're gonna love. I'm gonna use the principles and the knowledge from this program to help me boost my leads in my marketing firm. Buy this program, it's a wonderful investment for your future. You won't regret it and you'll absolutely love it.